Good afternoon, everybody. When we're underway, we'll get started with Aidan McGee from Sky Sports News.
Afternoon, Gareth.
How do you?
5 changes, I think, from the World Cup squad. A few surprises as well, I think. What's been your thinking over the squad ahead of these 2 matches?
Well, really, we're on the back of a successful tournament, so we picked a squad for the summer that we believed were the best players for that. Not too much kind of changed in that time because we reached the semi-final and there's only been 3 league games, so we wanted some continuity. We've obviously had some really sort of mature conversations with the likes of Gary Cahill, Jamie Vardy, Ashley Young, in terms of a desire to look at some younger players over the next period as well. And with 2 injuries, so we had 5 changes anyway, and we felt at this stage of the season that's enough. There's still a lot we want to recap on from the summer with the players and build on, but we also won't stand still. We've added young players. Luke Shaw is still only 23, Joe Gomez 21, so we've reduced the age of the squad again. And we're aware of the excitement over some other young players, but we think a bit early for some of them. We're looking to consolidate, but also look towards the future.
It's the first time in many a long year that an England manager's picked his first squad of the season with a real feel-good factor in the country about the England team. How do you maintain that, and what are your reflections on the summer now that you've had a little bit of time to reflect on what went on?
It's been quite a while since we haven't come out of the tournament with a root and branch review of English football, frankly. So, that, by the way, it doesn't mean everything's right. So, but where we are is that I think over a period of time, not just at senior level, but with our junior teams as well, some real signs of progress, and that's down to lots of changes in youth development and a consistency in the plan here. So, a lot of good things happening, but there's still work to do, and one of our biggest concerns would have to be playing time for English players, and I think that is shown by a number of the squad that came with us in Russia not getting opportunities to play, but more concerningly, young players that might be coming through to challenge that not getting opportunities to play. So for me, great what we experienced in the summer. Delighted that there's this reconnection with the national team, but the next step of how we improve and how we progress, lots of challenges ahead.
You touched on them a few moments ago, but how surprised were you when you were told of the decisions of Jamie Vardy and Gary Cahill? I mean, I understand you've known them for probably a little while.
Yeah, I mean, we had good discussions out in Russia with those 2 guys, and I sort of spoke with Ashley just this week. They I think have come to a point where they recognise their role within the squad, and all 3 have been brilliant, in contribution, not just in my time as England manager, but with Gary in particular, over quite a significant period of time. And I think as you get to become an older player, that squad role is more difficult. There's a lot of competing things for your time with family, and a recognition that we are going to look towards some younger players. But for me, it was a very mature discussion, and also pleased that all 3 want to remain available. None of them want to retire from international football. I think partly because they don't have an ego and they don't feel the need to make a big announcement about retiring, but also they would still love to be involved if needed in the games that matter, and I think that allows us to look to the future, but also we know that if we have big qualifiers where experience is going to be key, we have some excellent professionals to call on.
It was suggested recently that perhaps you lacked maybe a creative midfielder in the squad. Do you expect Adam Lallana, having had so long out in the last 18 months or so, to maybe fill in and do that role?
Well, Adam is a player that we, has had a big contribution for us, and we really have a lot of time for. Again, when you look at the squad I've named, all of that squad should be available for 2 years' time. We only have 20 matches between now and a European Championship, so we don't want to waste time in terms of looking at new things, opportunities to look at younger players, embed principles that are going to be with us over a period of time. 6 of those matches come in the next 3 months, so we have to continue to progress. But we're working off a solid foundation this time, and Adam is definitely a player that falls in the category of players, if he'd been fully fit, would have come with us in the summer.
Looking at Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I appreciate it's early in the season, but are you concerned that he's only had 22 minutes of Premier League football for Chelsea?
Well, I think Ruben, Fabian, there's several others. I go back to the concerns that for young players to improve, for any players playing football is important. For young players particularly so, because they haven't got 100, 200 league games, 400 league games behind them. So those learning experiences are really key. And then you want them to play in big matches as well, to experience playing under pressure and playing in against the very best opposition. So statistically, last year we were 33% of the league. This year we're down to 30. In the top 6 teams, we're a graph that's a real concern in terms of the decreasing number of English players. And where I have difficulty with that is that it's not that the talent isn't there. We've shown at under 17 world champions, under 20 world champions, and now senior World Cup, there are good English players there. So we've really got to think seriously about how we try and get those opportunities increased, because we have some very exciting young players that, if we're not careful, we'll lose because of that lack of opportunity.
How impressed have you been by Luke Shaw? I mean, an international recall for him just a few months ago didn't seem likely at all, but he started the season strongly. Yeah,
I mean, he's had a difficult period in terms of adapting to a new club, a really horrendous injury that he had to overcome. So really impressed with the physical condition that he looks in. And he had an extra edge to his game in the last couple of matches I've seen. When the games have been going against his team, he's been one that's really shown an aggression to his player desire not to lose, looking back to his powerful best, going past people, which is something we feel in the team in the summer, is something can add to what we had, getting that extra penetration in wide areas. So I'm really pleased for him, first and foremost, that he looks like he's playing with confidence, and he's always been a player we've liked from having worked with him with the under-21s, and of course he moved up to the seniors very young.
Many were expecting, I think, perhaps that Joe Hart might come back in, given his experience. Were you tempted to reintroduce him to the squad, and how confident are you that Alex McCarthy belongs in his company?
Well, it's an opportunity for Alex. He's not a player we've worked with, so we'd like to know a bit more about him. Joe is certainly somebody we know what he can do, and I think having sort of got as close to the World Cup as he did and then left him out at the end, it's a bit early to bring him back into the fold. And again, over the next few months, let's look at some of the others. I'm sure he's got a desire still to be involved with England. But again, in goalkeeping positions, we've got a problem because there's 4 or 5 goalkeepers maximum playing in the Premier League. And obviously Jack has now dropped into the Championship. We feel important at this moment to keep faith. But he's going to have a challenge to stay in the squad. Again, it's in terms of the pool of players that are playing, it's an area where we'd like more competition, ideally.
How important is it for you that Danny Rose is, at least for the time being, staying at Tottenham, because he was fancied to move abroad?
I think I'm not really concerned where players play. I think if they're playing regularly at a high level in big matches, then that's the key. And it was good to see Danny playing at Old Trafford again the other night. He missed a lot of football last year, so it was a very important year for him for his own confidence to play regularly at first team level.
It's been reported that West Ham's Declan Rice might be considering a change of allegiance from Ireland to England. Is he somebody who could fit in with your plans going forward? Have you even had any discussions with him?
Well, he's obviously, there's so many dual nationality players, and he's a good young player. He's got a really difficult decision because there's a lot of pressure on him, and I'm conscious he's a very young man, and there's a lot of spotlight on him. As far as I'm concerned, he's with Ireland at the moment, and as much as we think he's a very good player, that decision has to lie with him.
Okay, I'll hand it to Ian playing ITV next.
Yeah. Hi, Gareth. Just picking up that interesting point you said about the young players, all our great young teams, how they've done in Europe in World Cups. You say we've got to look at that and try and do more to get these players more football. Can you? What can you do?
Well, I just think it's worth. I talked about in the past, we've had root and branch reviews of youth development, and I think now we are at a stage where people are more confident in the level of coaching, more confident in the level of the academies, styles of play, the way that we have young kids on the right sized pitches playing smaller sided games. So many really positive things that have contributed to where we are now. But there is still this link between probably 17 to 21, where that bridge into first team football, and of course the financial power of the Premier League has a big impact, and the precarious nature of managers in the top flight in particular. So I think it's worth us having the debate and getting people around the table to discuss that missing piece, because there are some very good players from none of the under-20 World Cup winning team, as an example, have really established themselves in a first team, and if they're as good and have proved themselves to be as good as any players around the world, then that opportunity needs to be there. And if we're encouraging kids to go into academies, then presumably we're selling them the dream that they can play first team football. So there's an ethical challenge there as well.
Can I ask you what it's been like for you since the World Cup? Are you recognised more in the street? Any bizarre encounters?
Yeah, I mean, it's been... I got out of the country for a couple of weeks, went to America, which, again, you realise the impact of a World Cup is worldwide. And the lovely thing is that people enjoyed the journey the team had, and the players did an incredible job. They really did. When I look at their level of experience going into the tournament to achieve the performance they did, but also that connection with the supporters, and that's what's come through more than anything else, that people really enjoyed watching them. They felt that the team represented a modern England, and we brought a lot of enjoyment and happiness, and that's really rewarding to have been able to have that impact, and that will live with us forever. Of course, like in any sport and any walk of life, we've got to move on now and look to the next challenge, but very special for all of us.
Do you like being more famous and in the public eye, or would you rather that was a sidebar?
Well, it's been more enjoyable than 20 years ago, when I was probably almost as famous. So yeah, look, it's when you become the England manager, the profile of the role is what it is. So you have the opportunity to make a difference, and you're leading your country into a really important, in a sporting context, situation. So I understand what goes with it, and I love the role. It's a privilege to be in the role, and hopefully we can continue to improve the team, and we're on a cycle now that takes us into 2 years where it could be even more exciting and bigger, because a lot of the matches in the finals could be at home.
Came back to Joe from BBC.
Hello, Gareth. Can I just clarify, you said you had a conversation with Ashley Young. Are we to read into that similarly to Jamie Vardy and Gary Cahill, that he's happy not to be selected from now on?
Well, I think it'd be unfair to say happy, because he'd love to play, but totally understands that I wanted to look at some younger players in the sort of shorter term, and I don't see the point of bringing an older senior player into a squad just to sit on the bench. You know, he's been a brilliant character around the group, and there's the leadership aspect of that. But I also want to see some of the younger players take the lead in those situations. So I think it's common sense, really, and that's why the conversations with all three of those guys were, you know, realistic, mature conversations that, having been a senior player myself, is how I would have liked to have been treated. And Ashley, very clear that he wants to keep playing, and none of us know what the next 2 years will look like for any of those guys. But you know, they'll be 33 to 35, the three of them, and the way the game is heading, it's going to be more challenging for them with good young players coming through the demands of international football. But you know, if I'd spoken to Ashley 12 months ago, there's no way he thought he would have been playing in the World Cup with us, I'm sure. So we just don't know what will happen.
With Luke Shaw coming back into the squad, you described the last couple of seasons as difficult for him. What was his reaction to the phone call telling him he was back in the England squad?
I haven't spoken to him yet because I'm always conscious that you know, everything leaks out really quickly. So I know I have a good enough relationship with Luke and regular contact through the period where he hasn't been with us to know that he would be desperate to be involved, and we'll be really looking forward to the challenge.
With Jack Butland, you've admitted it will be difficult for him to keep his place whilst playing in the Championship. Have you had a conversation with him over the summer about the possibilities of leaving Stoke and the importance of playing in the Premier League?
No, I'm really conscious as the England manager. It's not my place to put pressure on players to leave clubs, regardless of a couple of things that were reported this morning. What is obvious is that if you're not playing in the Premier League and you're in a position on the field where 6 or 7 other players are in the Premier League and playing at that level, then it's going to be more difficult for you to maintain your place. Goalkeeping situation at the moment is a bit different, but you know, there are goalkeepers who will be playing in the Premier League. That will be an advantage because the types of players they're playing against, the quality of crossing, the quality of finishing, the sharpness of the game, the demands on their distribution will be higher, and so it is inevitably going to be more difficult for players playing in the Championship. But I can't rule out players that might be playing in the Championship now because our pool is getting smaller and smaller, and we are going to have to be. I think we've been quite creative over the last 12 months in fast-tracking some young players at the right time, getting those decisions that are right for them, not too early, but also where we feel they could improve the team. And you know, it looks like we're going to have to continue to do that.
And can I just get your reaction to the news of a potential joint home nations bid for the 2030 World Cup?
Well, I think, like several other countries around the world, we would, you know, be brilliant if we were to be able to host that. But I imagine there would be a lot of work to do around that bid and a lot of competition to host the event. So, of course, for us, you know, when we've held tournaments or Olympic Games in the past, it's been a brilliant occasion for everybody in the country. So I know there's a desire to try and do it, but that would be a long way off happening, I'm sure.
Last one for me. Have you chosen which waistcoat you're going to wear against Spain?
Not sure I'll ever wear a waistcoat again, frankly. We only have one option, incidentally, with the current sponsorship agreement. But no, I'll make a decision depending on the weather as to what I wear.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll end it there and head on through to the daily written briefing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.